The Nexperia crisis began with a quiet but seismic move by the Dutch government, a decision that would soon ripple far beyond the Netherlands' borders. In the heart of The Hague, officials weighed the risks and consequences, knowing their actions could reshape the global technology landscape. The announcement sent shockwaves through the global tech sector, rattling investors and executives from Silicon Valley to Shanghai. Markets reacted instantly, with technology stocks tumbling and analysts scrambling to assess the fallout. The world's attention turned to the Netherlands, now at the center of a high-stakes geopolitical drama. Nexperia, a key Dutch chipmaker, was owned by China's Wingtech technology, a fact that had long worried Western governments. For years, Nexperia's advanced chips powered everything from smartphones to cars, making it a vital link in the global supply chain. But its Chinese ownership raised red flags about potential technology transfer and strategic vulnerabilities. In September 2025, under mounting pressure from allies and amid growing concerns about national security, the Netherlands took the extraordinary step of seizing Nexperia. Officials cited the risk of Chinese state influence over critical infrastructure, warning that foreign control could compromise sensitive technologies and even threaten Europe's autonomy. The government swiftly ousted the Chinese CEO, signaling a decisive break from the company's previous leadership. Security teams oversaw the transition, ensuring that no sensitive data or intellectual property could be spirited away in the process. In his place, Dutch authorities installed a new executive team, framing the move as a bold defense against unwanted technology transfer to China. The new leadership was tasked with restoring trust and safeguarding the company's strategic assets for the Netherlands and its allies. This was more than a corporate takeover. It was a clear alignment with the U.S.-led effort to contain China's tech ambitions. The Netherlands, a small but crucial player in the semiconductor world, was now openly siding with Washington in the intensifying global tech rivalry. Dutch officials argued that Chinese control of Nexperia posed a threat not just to commercial interests, but to national defense. They warned that advanced chips could end up in military hardware, and that Europe's entire industrial base could be at risk if key technologies fell into the wrong hands. But this dramatic action set the stage for a direct confrontation with China, one that would escalate rapidly, drawing in global powers and raising urgent questions about the future of technology, sovereignty, and international cooperation. China's response was swift and punishing, leaving little doubt about its willingness to defend its interests on the world stage. Within hours, top officials in Beijing convened emergency meetings, signaling a hardline stance that would reverberate far beyond China's borders. Just days after the Dutch seizure, Beijing blocked all exports from Nexperia's massive Dongguan plant, responsible for 70% of the company's output. The facility, a sprawling hub of high-tech manufacturing, suddenly ground to a halt, its gates locked and shipments frozen. This move weaponized Nexperia's own assets, instantly choking off a vital supply of basic chips for global industries. Production lines from Asia to Europe and North America felt the shock, as the flow of essential components was abruptly severed. China accused the Netherlands of economic aggression, blaming them for destabilizing the global chip supply chain. State media amplified the message, and officials warned that further interference would not be tolerated. The export ban targeted the low-cost essential semiconductors that keep factories running, especially in the auto sector. Automakers, electronics firms, and even medical device manufacturers suddenly faced crippling shortages, threatening jobs and production worldwide. By cutting off these chips, China sent a warning: any country targeting Chinese interests would face severe economic consequences. The message was clear. China was prepared to use its industrial power as leverage in global disputes. The blockade turned a Dutch-Chinese dispute into a global supply chain crisis. Companies scrambled to find alternative suppliers, but the sudden disruption exposed just how dependent the world had become on Chinese manufacturing. Beijing had escalated the conflict from legal wrangling to a worldwide industrial emergency, sending shockwaves through financial markets and forcing governments to reconsider their reliance on a single source for critical technology. The world was now on notice. The era of secure, predictable supply chains was over. The auto industry was the first to feel the pain. Modern cars rely on hundreds of semiconductors, many supplied by Nexperia. When China blocked exports, Honda was forced to halt production at its major Mexican plant, a warning sign for the entire sector. U.S. automakers like Ford and GM scrambled to find alternatives, but the shortage was immediate and severe. European giants, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, dipped into reserves, but warned of looming shutdowns. Even smaller suppliers faced existential threats as their production lines stalled. The industry's just-in-time model was exposed as dangerously fragile. The auto world was in a chokehold, and Beijing held the key. The chip shortage rippled across the globe, exposing the vulnerabilities of a tightly interconnected supply chain. Nissan set aside millions to manage the crisis, but it was only a temporary fix. Internal strife erupted at Nexperia, with its Chinese unit suspending shipments from the Netherlands, deepening the chaos. The Dutch headquarters warned that chips from the Dongguan plant could no longer be guaranteed safe or reliable. Automakers now faced a grim choice: halt production or risk using potentially faulty chips in critical systems. Factories worldwide ground to a halt, becoming symbols of geopolitical tension. The crisis shattered confidence in the global trade system that had powered decades of growth. As losses mounted, the crisis became a top diplomatic emergency. The Netherlands, isolated and under pressure, realized it needed help from the EU and the US to resolve the standoff. High-level talks began, with Germany and the European Commission leading negotiations. The goal: find a compromise that would let China lift the blockade without losing face, and allow the Dutch to de-escalate. The US, meanwhile, was quietly thawing relations with China, creating a narrow window for a deal. After weeks of tense diplomacy, a fragile agreement started to take shape in early November. Every day of delay deepened the economic pain and political fallout. The path to peace was paved with uneasy compromises. The deal, announced November 8, 2025, was no simple reset. China agreed to resume Nexperia chip exports, but only under strict new export licensing rules. Western buyers had to formally pledge the chips would be used solely for civilian purposes, accepting China's oversight. This was a major concession. Europe now had to comply with Chinese conditions to access its own seized companies' products. China left the door open for future disruptions, making clear that full cooperation depended on Dutch actions. The power dynamic had flipped. Beijing was now dictating terms. Trade resumed quickly, with German and Japanese automakers restarting production. Dutch officials expressed relief, but the terms of peace were set by China. The crisis ended, but Europe's vulnerability was laid bare. In the end, the Dutch seizure of Nexperia proved a hollow victory. What seemed like a bold move to reclaim control over a critical tech asset quickly unraveled. The Dutch government celebrated, but beneath the surface, the real power remained elsewhere. The Netherlands controlled the company on paper, but China controlled the supply chain and the chips. Every essential component, every advanced microchip, still flowed from Chinese factories. The Dutch could change the name on the door, but not the origin of the technology inside. By blockading output, Beijing turned the Dutch asset into a liability, forcing Europe to negotiate for access to its own technology. Factories across the continent ground to a halt, and supply chains buckled under the pressure. European leaders found themselves at the mercy of decisions made thousands of miles away. The civilian use pledge was a diplomatic masterstroke, letting China impose its rules on Western firms. By promising that technology would only be used for peaceful purposes, China gained leverage to dictate terms, all while appearing reasonable on the world stage. Europe was forced to accept China's terms just to restart its factories. The economic pain was immediate and severe. Workers were furloughed, production lines sat idle, and entire industries faced uncertainty. The cost of resistance became too high to bear. The crisis exposed the limits of Western power when faced with China's economic leverage. Even the most powerful European governments found themselves scrambling for solutions, as markets tumbled and public confidence eroded. The lesson was clear: owning a company is not the same as controlling production. Without access to the manufacturing heartland, ownership became little more than a legal technicality. Real power lay with those who could keep the assembly lines moving. China showed it could weaponize its manufacturing dominance at will. The world watched as Beijing flexed its industrial muscles, demonstrating that control over production meant control over the future. The world saw that challenging China's economic interests would come at a steep price. In a globalized economy, the ability to manufacture and deliver critical technology is the ultimate trump card, and for now, China holds it. The Nexperia crisis was a wake-up call for the world. It showed that in the 21st century, power is defined by control over supply chains, not just military might. China's ability to paralyze Western industry without force revealed a new era of economic statecraft. For the West, The crisis exposed the dangers of over-reliance on a strategic rival for critical components. Calls for de-risking and building resilient supply chains are now urgent priorities. The episode set a precedent. Future disputes could trigger similar disruptions in other industries. The fragile peace did not resolve the underlying tensions, it only postponed a bigger reckoning. The world must now decide, adapt and build resilience, or remain vulnerable to economic coercion.